War in the 21st century rarely begins with tanks rolling across borders. It often starts with something quieter, but just as powerful: economic pressure. In the unfolding tension involving the United States, Iran, and China, the real battlefield may not be a stretch of desert or a city skyline, but the global energy market itself. The strategy emerging from Washington suggests that controlling or disrupting Iran's oil exports could serve a broader goal: weakening China's economic resilience while constraining Tehran's ability to fund its ambitions. In this sense, oil is no longer merely fuel, but a strategic lever that can shift power far beyond the Middle East. For decades, US policy toward Iran relied heavily on sanctions. The logic was straightforward: limit Tehran's access to global finance and energy markets until it alters its nuclear program or regional behavior. These measures inflicted genuine damage, cutting Iran's oil exports and pressuring its currency. Over time, Iran learned to adapt. Tankers began switching off their tracking systems. Oil shipments were rebranded and rerouted through third countries, and a shadow fleet developed to carry crude to willing buyers. China became the most important destination for these clandestine flows, often purchasing Iranian oil at a discount. In practice, this meant sanctions pushed much of Iran's oil trade out of sight, but did not eliminate it. That experience encouraged a new line of thought among some American strategists. If sanctions can be circumvented, perhaps the next step is not just to make it harder to buy Iranian oil, but to physically disrupt or control the flows themselves. Instead of relying solely on financial penalties, the United States could use its naval presence and military power to monitor, delay, or even seize shipments in the event of serious confrontation. This echoes older wartime strategies, but today's deeply integrated oil system is far more sensitive to disruption. Insurance costs, futures contracts, shipping routes, and the psychology of traders respond almost instantly to any sign of instability. Oil's central role in this story stems from the fact that it remains the most powerful lever in the global economy. Despite rapid growth in renewables and rising concern about climate change, the world still consumes over 100 million barrels of oil each day. Transportation, aviation, heavy industry, petrochemicals, and agriculture depend on it, and that infrastructure cannot be transformed overnight. This is why relatively small disruptions in supply can send shockwaves through prices and economic expectations. The 1973 Arab oil embargo, which sparked inflation and recession in Western economies, remains a powerful historical reminder of what energy leverage can do. The Persian Gulf is the most fragile node in this system. It supplies roughly 1/3 of globally traded oil, and within the region, Iran holds some of the world's largest reserves. Even when sanctions limit how much it can sell, Iran remains an important balancing producer. Removing its barrels from the market overnight would not just hurt Tehran. It would tighten supply everywhere at once. That matters especially for countries whose economies are deeply energy intensive, and China is the most important example. Its rapid rise as a manufacturing powerhouse has relied on a steady stream of imported fossil fuels. Steel, cement, chemicals, ports, and logistics all burn huge amounts of fuel. While Beijing has invested heavily in renewables and electric vehicles, those new systems rest atop an older industrial base still powered primarily by hydrocarbons. Iran's role in China's energy strategy is particularly significant. Over the past decade, Chinese refiners have become major buyers of Iranian crude, often through indirect channels designed to avoid direct confrontation with US sanctions. Many of these barrels go to smaller, independent, teapot refiners that depend on cheap feedstock to remain competitive. Because sanctions scare away many other customers, Iran frequently sells its oil to Chinese buyers at prices lower than global benchmarks. For China, this arrangement has offered cheaper energy. For Iran, it has provided a critical financial lifeline under intense Western pressure. From Washington's perspective, however, this triangular relationship is a problem. US officials see Chinese purchases of Iranian oil as a key factor, blunting the impact of sanctions and enabling Tehran to continue funding its missile programs and regional allies. Any serious confrontation with Iran inevitably touches Chinese interests. If Iranian exports were suddenly halted by military action, China would not be left completely without oil. Global markets are flexible enough that it could buy more from other exporters such as Saudi Arabia, Iraq, or Russia. But it would lose a major source of discounted crude and be forced to pay higher prices at a moment when geopolitical risk is already pushing costs upward. That vulnerability is a key reason why some analysts argue the current standoff is about much more than the United States and Iran. It is also about Washington using energy to apply indirect pressure on Beijing. At the same time, Iran and China have been deepening their own strategic relationship. A 25-year cooperation agreement announced in 2021 signaled a shared desire to expand collaboration across energy, infrastructure, and trade. For Beijing, Iran offers large oil and gas reserves and a strategic position linking Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. For Tehran, China represents a large, relatively stable market that does not attach political conditions in the way Western actors often do. This quiet partnership has frustrated Western policymakers who see it as undermining efforts to isolate Iran economically. Yet China has generally tried to avoid being drawn into direct confrontation with the United States over Iranian issues. Overlaying all of this is renewed debate about how the United States under Donald Trump might combine military and economic tools. Some of Trump's allies and advisors have floated ideas that go well beyond conventional sanctions, including seizing or redirecting Iranian oil shipments if a conflict escalates. Supporters of such a strategy argue that Iran depends heavily on oil revenues to finance its government and regional influence. So cutting off those revenues would sharply reduce its ability to cause trouble. They frame this as a way to weaken Tehran without requiring a large-scale ground war. The most sensitive point of all is the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that connects the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea and the wider oceans. Only a few dozen kilometers wide at its narrowest, it nonetheless carries around a fifth of the world's oil consumption and a significant share of global liquefied natural gas trade. Iran has repeatedly hinted that it could close or disrupt the strait if it feels sufficiently threatened. Naval confrontations, drone incidents, and tanker seizures in and around these waters have periodically rattled markets in the past. While there are pipelines that bypass the strait, they cannot handle all of the flows that normally pass through it. Even a partial disruption can send prices sharply higher. The consequences of such a disruption would not be confined to energy companies. When oil prices spike, transportation costs rise, which affects everything from air travel and shipping to food distribution and online commerce. Industries that rely heavily on fuel or petrochemical feedstocks see their costs increase. Inflation can accelerate as higher energy costs feed into the prices of goods and services. Central banks then must choose between raising rates to tame inflation at the risk of slower growth, or keeping them low and letting price pressures build. Wealthy economies may endure slower growth and heightened political debate as citizens feel the impact on fuel bills and everyday purchases.